This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injuries and additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You are entering the Stone Zone. I hope everyone had a great Easter holiday weekend. We enjoyed the traditional Italian Easter pie, pizza gain, which is made with eggs, cheese, salami, and olives, marron. It was unbelievable. Here in the Stone Zone, we have reported extensively on the serial mortgage fraud that was committed by New York Attorney General Letitia James. I've had both Sam Antar and Joel Gilbert, both who have documented extensive research. There are several areas of misrepresentation. In fact, the head of the Federal Home Finance Agency has sent a criminal referral to the U.S. Department of Justice. Specifically, the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, signed a power of attorney in the closing in August of 2023 regarding a Virginia property in which she said that she intended to be the occupant of that dwelling. And the problem with that is twofold. If it is accurate, well, then she would be constitutionally, under the New York law, ineligible to be the New York Attorney General. And if she did not move, well, then she lied on the form. This is just one of several examples. In another instance, she misrepresented the number of units in an investment property to qualify for a mortgage. She claimed it had 4 units, which would have qualified. In fact, it had 5. Earlier, she had another mortgage in which she essentially used the balance sheet and financials of her father to qualify for the mortgage, claimed in the mortgage application that they were man and wife, but correctly records on the title that they were father and daughter. Now the New York Daily News has published a piece trying to dismiss this mounting legal and ethical morass that is facing New York's Attorney General, claiming them as, quote, flimsy claims of fraud and, quote, petty payback for the outrageous civil case that she waged against Donald Trump. You remember that case? That's where she claimed that he overvalued his assets in order to borrow money in commercial loans, which he completely paid back on time, and the lenders made $40 million, under a law, by the way, that no one has ever been prosecuted under. This editorial by the New York Daily News, a newspaper that virtually no one reads, a newspaper that used to be the paper of the working people of New York, but lost its identity decades ago. If you want elitist pap, you can get the New York Times. And if you want the populist scoop, you can read the New York Post. I'm not sure who's reading the New York Daily News, but their editorial mischaracterizes the documented evidence and sidesteps all of the broader legal obligations that Attorney General James faces, not as a political figure, but as a sworn public official subject to financial disclosure. These include mortgage fraud and, of course, residency laws. We really have to set the record straight. The New York Daily News claims that James merely, quote, helped her niece buy, close quote, a Virginia home, and that a, quote, purchase agreement, close quote, not the mortgage, listed it as her principal residence. This framing is a flat-out lie. The document was not a purchase agreement, it was a specific of attorney signed by Attorney General Letitia James on August 17, 2023, only weeks before Donald Trump's valuation trial in New York, and it is recorded in the Virginia land records. The language, which I will read to you, is unambiguous. I hereby declare that I intend to occupy this property as my principal residence. Those are her words, not standard boilerplate language. Now, the Attorney General told the New York Times that she filed a separate application that did not specify her intention to occupy the property, and that the mortgage did not require her to do so. Those are both lies. There is no such notarized application on the public record, and the mortgage most definitely requires that she and her niece both inhabit the property. Then, of course, there's the Brooklyn unit count discrepancy that I referred to earlier. This is a two-decade pattern, not a quote-unquote corrected error. The editorial from the New York Daily News suggests that James' misclassification of her principal Brooklyn property was inherited from a previous owner. This, of course, is demonstrably false for several key reasons. First of all, the official certificate of occupancy issued on January 26, 2001, 2 weeks before she bought the property, clearly identifies it as a 5-family dwelling. This certificate of occupancy was issued after proper Department of Buildings inspection that specifically confirmed the 5-unit status. But James claimed that she had 4 units in order to qualify for the mortgage she received. Third, the discrepancy reported to authorities, it was dismissed as a minor error by the Daily News, a response that ordinary New Yorkers rarely receive for similar violations. Well, it turns out that Letitia James is not the only public official. There is a cornucopia of this going on. Congressman Adam Schiff, you remember him. He's the guy who said that he had seen more than circumstantial evidence of collusion between Russian intelligence and Donald Trump's campaign for president, and produced none whatsoever. Adam Schiff lies as easily as he breathes. And he's added again. Evidence now shows that the newly elected California Senator Adam Schiff has committed election fraud, has voted inelligibly, and has also guilty of mortgage fraud. These are big-time crimes. In April of 2023, an ethics complaint filed against U.S. Representative Adam Schiff, alleging that Schiff committed election fraud and voter fraud by claiming he was both a citizen of California and Maryland at the same time. Schiff reportedly purchased a home in Maryland with his wife in 2003, stating that they would occupy this home for 12 consecutive months as their, quote, primary residence. Despite that, Schiff continued to vote in California. Schiff may now also find himself referred to the Department of Justice for the same type of mortgage fraud committed by New York Attorney General Letitia James. Then Schiff refinanced his Maryland home in 2009, 2010, 2011, and again in 2013, while claiming the Maryland home as his primary residence. In 2009, when the House Ethics Commission investigation alleged that Schiff did this, Schiff claimed it was an error, and he repaid the exempt taxes to the state of Maryland. The definition of mortgage fraud in Maryland includes, quote, filing or causing to be filed in the land records in the county where a residential real property is located, any document relating to a mortgage loan that the person knows to contain a deliberate misstatement, misrepresentation, or omission. So Congressman Adam Schiff, despite claiming to live and represent the people in the state of California, filed and reaffirmed through his refinancing documents his primary residence. I won't read the address because I'm not going to dox him, although you could certainly find it in public records. Schiff, on the record, acknowledged of the mortgage document filings that his principal residence was in Maryland during the House Ethics hearing. Therefore, claims of mistake are completely fraudulent. Schiff received better rates on his mortgage of the Maryland property by claiming it was his primary residence as opposed to his secondary residence. Former Baltimore prosecutor Marilyn Mosley was recently convicted of mortgage fraud in Maryland, and Schiff should be as well. Schiff claims this property in Maryland really is his primary residence. Well, then he's guilty of voter fraud and fraud under California's election code. Schiff must have claimed that he was a resident of California in order to run for the U.S. House in California. And in California, it says, under the law, any person who files or submits for filing a nomination paper or declaration of candidacy knowing that it or any part of it has been made falsely is punishable by a fine not to exceed $1,000 and or by imprisonment. Therefore, Adam Schiff is a registered voter in California, and therefore anyone not entitled to vote in an election fraudulently votes or fraudulently attempts to vote in that election is subject to imprisonment pursuant to Section 1170 of the Penal Code for a term of 16 months to 2 years. A number of California residents have been convicted of voter fraud over the past few years. Well, in my opinion, Adam Schiff, Watermelon Head himself, should be next. Remember, Adam Schiff lies just as easily as he breathes. In December, he was insisting yet again on CNN that his House Intelligence Committee had identified Russian collusion with Donald Trump's 2016 campaign. High-level Trump campaign officials were passing information to Russian intelligence assets. Schiff lied yet again. The campaign official that Schiff was referring to is my old partner and former Trump campaign manager, Paul Manafort, and the alleged Russian intelligence asset is Konstantin Kilimnik. There are actually two fundamental problems wrong with this phony narrative, one that has been repeated not just by Schiff, but also by de facto head of the Mueller witch hunt, Andrew Weissman. We'll be talking about him with our next guest, Jason Goodman of Crowdfund the Truth, in our next segment. First, the substantial evidence is that not only is Kilimnik not a Russian intelligence agent, but evidence shows that he was working extensively with U.S. intelligence. Kilimnik actually worked for U.S. Senator John McCain prior to the 2016 presidential campaign. Paul Manafort himself addressed this in his own book, Political Prisoners, Persecuted, Prosecuted, but Not Silenced, when he said, my associate Konstantin Kilimnik was not only not a Russian agent, but he was a U.S. asset. The independent journalist Matt Taibbi has also confirmed that Kilimnik was not a Russian asset. There's another fundamental problem with this claim. The truth is, the Trump campaign had no proprietary polling information at the time that Manafort allegedly shared this information with Mr. Kilimnik. Therefore, any information that Manafort gave to Kilimnik would have been public information. As I say, independent journalist Matt Taibbi reported the FBI's own declassified reports showed that Kilimnik met with the head of the Kyiv embassy's political section at least bi-weekly during the time he was working with Manafort and Yanukovych, the former president of Ukraine, who was toppled in an illegal coup. Yanukovych was, of course, elected in a Democrat election. This is very typical of Adam Schiff. Not that long ago, the Inspector General for the Biden Justice Department released a report that showed that both Schiff and his protege, Congressman Eric Swalwell, both leaked classified information regarding the Russian collusion investigation to various media outlets. So the question remains, why haven't Adam Schiff or Eric Swalwell been prosecuted? Seems to me that we have a two-tier justice system, and soon, hopefully, we will have a one-tier justice system, because now the head of the Federal Home Finance Administration has referred Letitia James to the Justice Department for prosecution, and hopefully the head of that agency will be referring Adam Schiff to the same agency. Coming up, I'm going to have our guest, Jason Goodman, lay out for you how Congressman Jamie Raskin also engaged in mortgage fraud, as well as Andrew Weissman himself, perhaps the most corrupt federal prosecutor in U.S. history. It's all coming up here in the Stone Zone. So whatever you do, don't touch that dial, because we'll be back with the stone cold truth about all of these crooked politicians.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
Are you a forward thinker? Then you need an HR and finance platform that thinks like you do. Workday is the AI platform that helps propel your organization, your workforce, and your industry into the future. Workday, moving business forever forward.
You need a vacation, so why not come play in LA? Fill your days with fun and let Los Angeles dazzle you with iconic landmarks, epic scenery, and stunning coastlines. And when the sun goes down, it's the perfect place to enjoy world-class dining and nightlife. Let play lead the way and soak up all this city has to offer. Start planning your LA getaway now at visitcalifornia.com.
Clorox Sentiva smells like lavender. Cleans like Clorox. And feels like...
All right, that could go on for a while. Experience the long-lasting freshness of Clorox Sentiva. Available in Clorox Sentiva Lavender Scented Bleach. Use as directed.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Stone Zone. Pope Francis died on Easter Monday, April 21st, 2025, at the age of 88 at his residence in the Vatican's Casa Santa Marta. He died one day after meeting Vice President J.D. Vance. The process to choose a new pope is called a conclave. After a pope dies or resigns from office, a group of the highest-ranking non-papal officials within the Catholic Church, the cardinals, gather in Rome. Cardinals over the age of 80 are excluded from the process, stemming from a Pope Paul the Sixth edict made in 1970. This means some of the most conservative cardinals will not be allowed to vote. It makes it much more difficult for a more traditional successor to Francis to be chosen. In fact, of the current College of Cardinals, 80% of them were chosen by Francis, who at a minimum would be considered, shall we say, a far more progressive pope than perhaps I would prefer. Now, these electors, and there's a cap of 120 of them, though that number can slightly differ depending on the circumstances. They meet in the Sistine Chapel, the Pope's official residence in Vatican City, and they're essentially locked in. In other words, that's where the term conclave comes from. It's Latin for with a key, similar to a sequestered jury during a high-profile case. And the idea is to shield them from undue influence and protect the integrity of the process. The cardinals cast ballots up to 4 times a day, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. Each writes the name of their chosen candidate on a slip of paper, folds it, and places it in a chalice on the altar. The ballots are counted by 3 scrutineers, and to win, a candidate needs 2/3 majority of the votes. If no one gets that majority after a round, the ballots are burned with a chemical that turns the smoke black. That's the visible smoke you see from emitting from the top of the Vatican. This process repeats itself until there is a victor, at which point the smoke turns white thanks to a different chemical mix, and the crowd knows that a new pope has been chosen. That is when Habemus Papam, Latin for "we have a pope," is shouted from the balcony. I think we are all praying for the selection of a pope who is a godly man who will stand up for freedom and guide his church in the decades ahead. Coming up next, Jason Goodman, the independent investigative journalist behind Crowdsourcing the Truth, is going to blow the whistle on former prosecutor Andrew Weissman and Congressman Jamie Raskin. More mortgage fraud coming right up here in the Stone Zone.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel or that white chocolate mocha. Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. 3 couples, 4 vacations, a lot to unpack. Watch The 4 Seasons, a new series starring comedy favorites Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Will Forte, Coleman Domingo, and more in a hilarious and heartfelt love letter to long-term relationships. Based on the original Alan Alda film. Watch The 4 Seasons, streaming now only on Netflix.
You guys, I just found the most incredible Mother's Day gift. It's called Goldbelly. Goldbelly is this amazing site where you can get the most iconic foods from restaurants all across the U.S., shipped anywhere in the country for free in time for Mother's Day. We're talking cakes from Ina Garten and Martha Stewart, Magnolia Bakery's famous banana pudding, and New York bagel brunches. Make Mother's Day perfect with Goldbelly.com and get 20% off your first order with promo code MOM. That's Goldbelly.com, promo code MOM.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. You're in the Stone Zone. Joining me now is investigative journalist Jason Goodman. Jason Goodman is the founder of Crowdsourcing the Truth, and he has determined that what we see going on with the New York Attorney General Letitia James, the serial mortgage fraud at least, this is before we get into the question of her cover-up of sexual assault by her chief of staff. I'll be writing about that very shortly, as well as what I think is epic campaign finance fraud. But the media has been focused on the referral by the Federal Home Finance Administration to the Justice Department of Letitia James for serial mortgage fraud. But Jason, she's not the only one, is she?
No, she's not, Roger.
So let's touch on Adam Schiff. I spoke about this a little bit in the beginning, but then you had some groundbreaking information on both former federal prosecutor Andrew Weissman, as well as Congressman Jamie Raskin, 2 other virulent critics of President Donald Trump. Let's start with Adam Schiff.
Yeah. Well, Adam Schiff, of course, everybody knows, is one of the most visible enemies of Donald Trump. I'm surprised that a lot of people in the mainstream haven't really heard of Andrew Weissman, even though he was the lead prosecutor in the Mueller investigation. And, you know, he's one of these guys who's been kind of out of the limelight for most of his career. Anybody who does know him pretty much knows him from seeing him on MSNBC. And then he becomes like a character on a TV show, depending on what he says and how you think he appears on television. You like him or dislike him. But Adam Schiff, everybody knows. President Trump has called him watermelon head and pencil neck. I like it when Trump does stuff like that because it's a mechanism that he's using to embarrass Adam Schiff, who deserves to be embarrassed. But there's a lot of details to what he's done, Roger, and I'm happy to share them with you and your audience.
Well, we touched a little bit on it. It has to do with his Maryland home. Let's touch on that, but I want to leave enough time to talk about these other 2 reprobates. So run us through Adam Schiff and his residence.
Yeah, I mean, to summarize it in the simplest way for lay people and people who haven't studied the information to understand, because it is very dense, Adam Schiff, obviously everybody knows that he's a representative from California. So he purchased a home in Maryland that I guess would be his second home. But a lot of people, particularly those who have had mortgages, a lot of people know that you get a much favorable rate on your mortgage if the loan is on your primary residence. And this is based on, I guess, actuaries have figured out that when you live in the house, you take care of it. And it's just much more statistically likely for a loan to be repaid on somebody's primary residence than a secondary residence that they might abandon or whatever. So the thing that is so important about what Adam Schiff has done, Roger, is that we almost don't even need any more investigation or any trial because he's incriminated himself. He's basically taken out a loan for this property in Maryland, and he has signed the loan, sworn under penalty, that he will occupy the home and that it will be his primary residence within 60 days of executing this agreement, which is, a 20-something-year-old agreement that he was lying about for 17 years, repeatedly making this false statement. Now, remember, you were talking about Letitia James. She's all up in arms that somebody who works for Donald Trump, not even Donald Trump, Michael Cohen, made payments and got involved in how these things were recorded as legal payments or whatever. There's a strong argument to be made that they were legitimate legal payments. He was paying a settlement in a lawsuit. You do that through your lawyer. It's different than going to the strip show and giving Stormy Daniels money. You're settling a lawsuit. But I digress. Adam Schiff, and he should know better because he is also an attorney, and that's critical, Roger. That's why this is the lawfare loan scam. So far, all the participants I've identified are themselves attorneys. And this is important for a number of reasons. First of all, they are making all of these filings and, including legal language. It's very unusual at times. That seems to be done by them. There's no third-party attorney signing in the fields where normally, if you or I were to close on a home, we'd probably hire a real estate attorney. I can only surmise that these lawfare criminals didn't want to do that because obviously it's much easier for two people to keep a secret if one of them are dead, or if the other person never knew about it. So I think they don't want to involve potentially legitimate attorneys in these transactions because it could be a stop to the flow of funds. But the thing that Adam Schiff did that I just don't see how he gets out of, he put himself into a legal double bind. Because if he was being honest in his sworn statements that he signed on the Maryland mortgage, that was his primary residence, well, then he's committed fraud in representing that he could run to be a congressional representative from California. And if he was being honest in his statements about running for Congress in California, then he's committed mortgage fraud. So I think he's in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, it's almost identical to what Letitia James has done. She's tried to lie her way out of it, but I don't think that's going to work. All right, let's get into Andrew Weissman because you really broke this story. Mr. Weissman bought an extremely expensive, condominium in Manhattan, but it was under very shady circumstances. Lay this on us.
Yeah. It's unclear if he bought it or if it was like a Christmas gift. A Hanukkah gift, because Weissman, he actually lives in sort of near the NYU area, the northern tip of the West Village. And he's a professor, everyone knows, at NYU Law. That's where I first confronted him about his relationship with Felix Sater, which is going to come up later in this investigation. Felix Sater, many people know, is a very long-standing FBI confidential human informant, signed an agreement with Weissman in 1998. And Sater has testified under oath that he's done all kinds of things. This guy's basically the Russian James Bond, but I digress. Back to Weissman. So Weissman purchased two condominiums valued at $7.5 million in the Tribeca neighborhood of New York, very exclusive neighborhood. He bought them from this guy named Leonard Toberoff. And the interesting thing about Toberoff is he was business partners with Jeffrey Epstein in the 1980s. And a lot of people who, and believe me, I'm not poo-pooing being skeptical. You should be. Let's take everything skeptically. But this guy wasn't just someone who happened to be doing business at Bear Stearns and didn't know anything about Epstein. Toberoff was involved in the Tower financial scandal, which was, people might recall, Stephen Hoffenberg, who was involved with the New York Post. Hoffenberg later was convicted and admitted to being involved in a $460 million Ponzi scheme. And Epstein had lied about the source of the funds for an investment that Toberoff, Epstein, and a guy named Niederlander made in a company in 1988 called Riddell Sports. So $1.6 million of that investment came from stolen funds. And so, this is Toberoff is involved in this deal, and he just doesn't care. So, it's a little bit inexplicable why Toberoff would do that. Then he had already been involved with this thing called Penwalt Corp, some sort of takeover bid. And again, these are details that people are going to know a lot more about than I did. I just was researching this for background into this Toberoff. And these are all things that Charles Ortel has told me about over the years. Charles knows great details about each of these scandals. But the point is, this is not just some random guy. This is a criminal associate, an alleged criminal associate, I should also say. Everything that I'm saying is my opinion, and Roger Stone and ABC Radio don't necessarily endorse this. I am not an attorney. Nothing I'm saying here is legal advice. This is my opinion and information that I have gathered from looking at public documents. Anyone can get these documents. I don't have any access to anything secret or whatever.
Yeah, no, that's a very very key point. I've invited Attorney General Letitia James onto the show here at the Stone Zone at any time to respond to all of these allegations, and that is an open invitation. I don't expect that she will accept it, but I would be happy to have her on.
Yeah. Well, okay, so back to Weissman. Flash forward to April 2023. Okay. Now, this is the guy who was the head of the DOJ's Enron task force. He was the lead prosecutor on Mueller's impeachment of Trump. Let's just focus on Weissman for a second, because this is not, if I told you I bought an apartment and then I found out the guy was associated with Jeffrey Epstein, I'm a dummy who was running 3D cameras for Spider-Man for many years. I don't know who all the high-end financial criminals in New York City are, but Andrew Weissman was in charge of the organized crime division of the Eastern District of New York U.S. Attorney's Office for many years. In fact, deranged Jack Smith came up under Weissman in the Eastern District of New York U.S. Attorney's Office. Burl Howell came out of there. Loretta Lynch came out of there. It's a viper's pit. But anyway, Weissman, he buys this $7.5 million, they're adjoined apartments, two separate apartments, and I'm told it's unusual. I've never been involved in a deal like this, $7.5 million, two apartments. I'm told it's unusual for two separate real estate entities to be on one mortgage, but that's how this was done. What I found weird is you're buying something for $7.5 million, but the mortgage is only for $1 million. That seems crazy. Don't you usually have like maybe 20% and they give you the rest of it? Seems too low to me. But the other thing is there's no record of where the other $6.5 million came from. Weissman gets this sort of fugazi $1 million mortgage from First Republic Bank 5 days before it goes into FDIC receivership. So it's impossible to presume that the bank didn't know that was imminent, or that the DOJ and, the Treasury Department, people knew that was happening. And it just seems weird to me that a bank in such financial distress would be giving out $1 million loan to anybody, let alone one with such ridiculous terms. Average mortgage rate in 2023 at that time in April was like 6.5% to 7.5%. Weissman, it's a 30-year jumbo ARM. It's an adjustable rate mortgage that starts at 4.95%, but it can go up as high as, I think, 10% or possibly even higher. The thing that's crazy is 5 days later, when First Republic goes into FDIC receivership and $15.6 billion of, insurance magic happens. But don't worry, Roger, they didn't use any taxpayer money. You didn't pay for it, but you probably did pay $9 for eggs, because the dollar is worth about half as much as it should because they keep printing more of them. But don't worry. It's all fine. Andrew Weissman got his apartment. So we don't know where the $6.5 million came from. That's quite crazy. He seems to have foreknowledge that the bank was going to collapse. And so when the bank collapses and the FDIC takes it over, receivership, whatever they do, it gets taken over by J.P. Morgan. And Weissman, because of this wonderful arrangement, he locks in his 4.95% rate for 10 years. So he's getting an amazing deal on the mortgage. But, you know, Roger, it's interesting because I started this investigation maybe about 5 days ago, and some of this stuff has been kicking around, and a lot of people have been sending me ideas, and something occurred to me. You know, it does kind of make you upset to hear about these connected guys getting good deals on mortgages, and we're talking about $7.5 million this and that. But specifically with, let's say, Jamie Raskin and Adam Schiff. Let's just look at that specifically for a moment.
Jason, we're going to have to come back and do that on the other side. Sure. If you're just tuning in, you are listening to the Stone Zone. I'm interviewing Jason Goodman, the founder of Crowdsource the Truth, and we'll be right back with the Stone Cold Truth. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial, because here we tell you the Stone Cold Truth. We criticize Republicans and Democrats, and what you hear about Congressman Jamie Raskin on the other side may shock you. Don't go away.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Principles. Are there limits to the U.S. government's debt growth? What will happen if the debts are not curtailed? What should policymakers or investors do? Those are urgent questions that legendary investor and New York Times bestselling author Ray Dalio addresses in his new book, How Countries Go Broke, The Big Cycle. The book comes out in June and is available for pre-order today, wherever books are sold.
Impact confirmed. The Slayer has been activated.
Demonic threat level increasing.
Hold the line!
All the power of hell cowering before one man.
id Software presents Doom: The Dark Ages. Available May 15th on Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5, and PC. Pre-order now.
Rated M for mature.
That moment when you realize your skincare is actually working. That's Rodan & Fields, the #1 female dermatologist-founded skincare brand in the U.S. Designed by 2 dermatologists who don't just know women's skin, they know how to formulate for it. Rodan & Fields, love what you see. Tap the banner or visit rodanandfields.com/Spotify to get your exclusive welcome offer.
5 immersive worlds, 1 amazing theme park. Get ready to explore the all-new Universal Epic Universe, featuring the wizarding world of Harry Potter, Ministry of Magic, Super Nintendo World, How to Train Your Dragon, Isle of Berk, and Dark Universe. Epic Universe opens May 22nd at Universal Orlando Resort. Our universe will never be the same. Tickets and packages on sale now at universalorlando.com.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back in the Stone Zone. We're talking to investigative journalist Jason Goodman about the sweetheart deal that was gotten by former federal prosecutor Andrew Weissman. You remember him. He's the guy who covered up mob murders in Brooklyn, the guy who brought down both Enron and Arthur Anderson, only to have his convictions in those cases unanimously overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court. The Andrew Weissman who destroyed the cell phone memories of all of the Mueller prosecutors when they were under subpoena from Special Prosecutor John Durham. That Andrew Weissman. You may have seen him at MSNBC. By the way, he is the guy who ordered the FBI to storm my home at 6 o'clock in the morning when they simply could have contacted my attorney and told me to turn myself in. We know that because I was arrested at 6:06, and at 6:11, a producer at CNN texted a copy of my sealed indictment to my attorney. And while it had no court stampings or other court markings on it, if you looked at the metadata tags, it did have the initials of the man who wrote it, and therefore the man who leaked it in violation of federal law. That would be Andrew Weissman. But I want to wrap up with Weissman and get into Congressman Jamie Raskin. This guy is a real piece of work. And that story is even more outrageous. So, Jason, lay it on us.
Well, so exactly. I mean, with Weissman, okay, he's got this $7.5 million asset. We've been through that. And that's one method here. Obviously, if somebody could gift you a $7.5 million apartment in New York City, you're looking at maybe $25,000 a month in income or more. But when we look specifically at the case of Raskin and the similarities to what Adam Schiff was doing, it really raises questions, Roger, because there we have, those guys did, Raskin did satisfy some of a mortgage. His goes back to a house that he had in the 90s, which is very interesting. And he's doing a lot of refinancing of it. At one point, he even gets into a $0 deed where he's transferring the property from himself and his wife to himself and his wife. I don't understand why he's doing that. I mean, again, these are complex criminal mechanisms, and I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a criminal, so I can't say why they're doing it. I'm just in a mode where I'm going through and I'm gathering the evidence. And the thing that strikes me as weird, just as an initial matter, because I started to break this down, using artificial intelligence, I can do a lot of analysis of this data that I would never be able to do myself. And it turns out that in the case of Adam Schiff and Jamie Raskin, I found sort of the similarities in what they were doing. And it turns out that between the two of them, they were saving between $150 and $200 a month on their mortgages. And it just strikes me as odd that someone as sophisticated, these guys are both attorneys, they're both in Congress. They have very public lives. Why would they risk their reputations, going to jail, losing their bar licenses over such small beer crimes? There's no way. To me, Roger, this has got to be an initiation right into a criminal network that's involved in crimes so vast that the theft of multiple millions of dollars they just don't even have the bandwidth to think about. So that's what I'm interested in learning, is why did these guys do this? It doesn't make sense on its face.
I think the answer, we have about a minute and a half to go here, but I think the answer is they did it because they can. They did it because we have, until Donald Trump's reelection, a two-tier justice system in which Donald Trump is put through horrific trials on trumped-up, ridiculous charges in New York. But criminals like Adam Schiff, like Letitia James, like Jamie Raskin get sweetheart deals that the average person could never get. They violate multiple laws, but they are never held to account. I'm afraid we have to leave it there. I want to thank our guest, Jason Goodman. Jason, where can people find you on X, formerly known as Twitter?
Yes, the best way to follow me there is at JG, like Jason Goodman, _CSTT, like Crowdsource the Truth. JG _CSTT on X. Thank you, Roger, so much for having me on.
Thank you so much for helping compress so much complicated information into a short period of time. But it is a perfect example of what's been going on in Washington and why it is absolutely essential that we drain the swamp. Jason, thanks for joining us. And to all our listeners, until we meet again, God bless you and Godspeed. And thank you for entering the Stone Zone.
Thanks for listening to the Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear the Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?